I am absolutely delighted to welcome Senator Ralph Babbitt of the United Australia Party onto the show today. Welcome, Senator. How are you today?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show today. I'm very pleased to be here. Obviously, we're going to talk about some great news that's just happened in Australia here. I'm currently in our nation's capital at the moment. I'm in Canberra at the moment, and we are currently sitting. So if you hear some bells ringing in the background, just ignore those. It's not a fire alarm or something like this. It's a bell calling us down to the chamber to vote on something. But I have gone out of my way to get some leave from the chamber so I could be here with you today.
Amazing. We so appreciate that. Thank you so much. Because what you are about to talk about, we believe is an absolute first around the world, which is something that has to be celebrated. We've come through a miserable 4 years, and the Australian Parliament is finally acknowledging a need for an inquiry into excess deaths as a result of your work. Congratulations. Tell us about it.
First of all, let's just rehash what we all went through over the last 3 years or so. I don't know the situation exactly of what happened over in the UK, but over here in Australia, we were locked in our homes. People who were unvaccinated were treated like common criminals. We were denied our humanity. We were told that we were grandma killers. We were told that we were no good. In my home state of Victoria, where I live, we had curfews because obviously the COVID-19 virus knows what time of day it is. And if you're outside after your curfew, it's going to get you. But if you're outside any other time, it's not going to get you. It was absolute madness. Everything that went on in my home state, in my country, was completely unscientific. Completely. It was as if our state premiers, our leaders, got drunk on power and just wanted to exercise that power. That's what it seemed like to me, because it was not based in the science. And we can talk about that at another time. But recently what's happened is two things have happened. First of all, we've had a win in the courts. It's a small win, but it's a step in the right direction. What's it about? So I believe it was in 2022, Queensland Police and Queensland ambulance workers challenged their workplace mandates via the Queensland Supreme Court with the financial assistance of my party and our chairman, Mr. Clive Palmer. So, Mr. Clive Palmer, thank you so much for putting your money where your mouth is and paying for this court action, this badly needed court action. So what happened? It took 2 years, but what happened? Basically, our Queensland Supreme Court ruled that mandates breached part of the Human Rights Act, which states that all public service employees must be given proper consideration to their human rights, I should say, before making any decisions. And that, I guess, the government must act and make decisions that are compatible with human rights for employees in the public service. Now, the court found, so there's two things here. First of all, there's Queensland Police and the ambulance workers. So first part, the court found that the police commissioner, and her name is Katarina Carroll, who, by the way, has just recently resigned just before the outcome of this court case. Maybe she resigned because she didn't want to be in the frying pan. I'm just speculating, who knows, but she has recently resigned just before the verdict was handed down. So it ruled that the commissioner failed to give proper consideration to human rights relevant to the decision to issue the vaccine mandate. Now, the judge said, and I quote, and I apologize if I'm taking up too much time here, but I think it's important.
No, please go for it. We love it.
Yeah. So the judge said, this is what he said. He said, I have held that the police commissioner, in making the decisions, the subject of contention, failed to give proper consideration to human rights relevant to those decisions. As a result, those decisions were unlawful. Basically, decision to issue mandates, not lawful. First part. Second part, now this is in regards to the ambulance workers. So the court also found that the Department of Health director was unable to prove that he issued the vaccine mandate under an implied term of the employment agreements for ambulance workers. So basically, he ruled again that the decision was of no effect and had no force, right? What happens now? What happens now? What does it mean? It sets a precedent, okay?
Yes, it does.
It sets a precedent. Now, if one of our states, Queensland, has said, hey, this was unlawful, every other state now has to have a look at this. It gives ammunition to everyone else in every other state. Now, I would expect, and any thinking person would expect, that we'd see a massive wave of cases hit the courts now across Australia, and hopefully Australia can galvanize people across the world to get into the courts and make their voices heard and demand justice, basically, for what happened to them throughout the last 3 or 4 years. Everyone that was impacted by these, look, in my opinion, it was inhumane actions, should be, especially in Queensland, should be lining up for compensation. That's what they should be doing. I'm going to go one step further. I don't think compensation is enough. I want to see the people in the positions of power that made these terrible decisions to be held accountable. And you know what? I want to see some prosecutions. I want to see these people dragged before court and have to explain exactly why they did what they did. Because frankly, it made no sense. Now, in Australia, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but in Australia, we already had a pandemic handbook already written out what you should do during a pandemic and all these kind of things. And in that pandemic handbook, it says absolutely nothing about locking a whole country in their homes, locking up people that are not sick, putting curfews in place where you can't leave your house, saying you can only go 5 kilometers from it. None of this is in the pandemic handbook. So these people need to face justice for what they've done. That's the first thing. The other thing that's happened, and I
just have to say, you absolutely speak my language. I do not think compensation is enough for a second. We need convictions. We need charges. Absolutely. And everything you've just said, by the way, Senator Ralph Babbitt is not only a truth seeker, but the easiest person to interview in the entire world, because you ask him a question and he answers everything. So it's absolutely magnificent. But I'm totally, and we love it. Please carry on.
I'm passionate. I'm passionate about this issue. I'll tell you a bit about my background before I talk about something else that's happened very recently in the Australian Senate. I was elected to Parliament not because I'm a career politician, not because I worked my way up the chain with one of the bigger parties, because I paid my dues to the system, and then I was given a safe seat to step into. I crawled and I scratched and I fought my way to this position, and I was elected in 2022 on the back of all the draconian garbage that we saw all of our governments across the West push upon all of us. And you know what? There's something to be said there, and we could talk about this if you like, but taking orders from unelected globalist bodies like the WHO and the UN, that's a whole other can of worms that we can talk about if you like. But so I came to this position from the outside. I'm an outsider. That's what I am. And that's why I'm talking like this. That's why I'm telling you the truth. That's why I'm being upfront and forthright about what's happening in all of our respective nations today. Now, the other thing that happened in the Australian Senate, and I believe this is the first time this has ever happened. Unless I'm wrong, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Leave a comment down below or in wherever this video ends up being if I'm wrong. But the Australian Senate just yesterday voted on a motion which I put forward. Now, the motion was very simple. The motion said that the Senate acknowledges that people are dying and that we don't know why people are dying and that we must investigate. I put it up for a vote and it got up by 1 vote. But what does it mean? Super important, super important. Finally, a parliament, finally, our upper house, I believe the equivalent for the UK is the House of Lords. So our upper house has finally said, you know what? People are dying. You know what? We don't know why. You know what? Let's investigate. Finally. Now, it doesn't give us an investigation straight away. It just simply says that we need to investigate. The next part of this process now is I will go back to the Senate and I will say, my fellow senators, last week, or whenever I get a chance to go back, last time that we were here, you said that we have a problem. We all agreed. The majority agreed. You said that people are dying. You said that we need to investigate. Well, now is the time. Here's my next motion to the Senate. Let's open up the investigation officially. Give me the resources. Give me the authority. We will go and investigate. We will find out what's going on. Now, I'm not saying that everyone, that all of these extra deaths are because of the mRNA injection. I have my suspicions, but I'm not saying that. But there is enough there for us to investigate and shed a light into dark places. The job of a parliament, especially of an upper house in Australia, our job is to investigate, is to look into things, is to find out what's going on. And you know what? Over the last 3 years, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm the one who's mad, but our own parliament, our own government has not wanted to look into why its own people are dying. To me, that is freaking madness. Madness. But
absolutely,
to them, they're okay with it. I don't know why.
yeah.
I have my suspicions.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the problem about quote unquote complicity is it can make people behave like that. But, you know, that's just my opinion. But here's what's really fascinating to us is when all those measures were taking place, I think unquestionably Australia and New Zealand were considered the most tyrannical, the most draconian around the world. I mean, England was bad. The UK was bad. Trust me, it really was. And a lot of what you said absolutely happened here. But it's quite phenomenal. The events of the last few days in Australia, this is like a 180 going on here.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have to take the wins where we can get the wins. Of course, we have to do that. But we are seeing a shift here. Our governments, our parliament spent 3 years telling us that we were the crazy ones, telling us that we were going to kill grandma, telling us that we were bad, telling us that we were less than human. That's what they did. And finally, there are chinks in the armor. Finally, because the wheels turn slowly, of course, in parliaments all across the world. I'm sure it's the same over in the UK. But they have finally admitted that there is something here that is worthy of investigation. And I think that we need to count our blessings. That it seems to me anyway that we're on the other side now. And now we can start to push for justice. Now, I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be quick because it's just not going to be quick.
No.
But people like me, all across the world, in all of the different parliaments, aren't going to put it down. We're like a dog with a bone. We're going to chase it down, and we are not going to stop until everyone who suffered, and I'm one of these people who suffered. My family suffered, I suffered, my friends suffered, my colleagues suffered. We all suffered because we didn't want to comply with what, in my opinion, was tyranny. Tyranny is what it was, in my opinion.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that the people that did this to us, all of them, are brought to justice. I want to go off on a little tangent here, and I apologize in advance.
No need. Go for it.
I'm going to tell everyone at home that's watching this right now, and I'm sitting in my nation's capital now, and I'm telling you from my experience, the people that you elect to run your country are puppets. They are not the true wielders of power. Donald Trump likes to call this the deep state. And I'm going to tell you now that the deep state is alive and well in Australia, and it is alive and well in the UK. Of course, it's alive and well in the United States. We're all seeing that play out right now. So do everything you can, everyone that's watching this broadcast, everyone that's hearing my voice. You must be more involved in the political process. You must take action. Watching videos on the internet and commenting on social media is great because we get to share information. But once you turn off that broadcast, you got to join a party that's aligned to your values. Heck, I don't even care if you join one of the major parties in your country, if that's what you want to do. But you need to be active, because if you're not active, the people behind the scenes that sit in the shadows, and they are there, that control the levers of power, that control, I believe it's Rishi Sunak who's in charge.
Rishi Sunak, right? Yes, he was put in place, no doubt, by the deep state, because we didn't vote for him to be prime minister.
Well, exactly. The people behind the scenes that pull those strings, they don't have your best interests at heart. And I choose my words very carefully here. They don't have your best interests at heart. These authoritarian tyrants want nothing but to see you be a serf, be a slave, be a peasant, while they sit at the top of the pinnacle of power. And they use their agents in the parliament to bring that to pass. So do not be complacent. Get active, join a party, run for parliament, make your voice heard, because the West, all of the West, is is looking down a barrel right now. We are not going up, we're going down.
And so let me read you some of the comments. Lou said, "You're a legend, Ralph Babbitt. You are a legend." Peter Folder said, "This is giving a bit of much needed hope to Australia as it did have it tough." Absolutely. We had it tough, but we recognize that you had it tougher. And Catherine Hutton says, "Puppets need to be held accountable for the crimes against humanity." And somebody else whose name I can't see says, "This guy is a dude. Wish he was in the UK." And so say all of us. Well, Senator Babbitt, we're going to let you go. You've been absolutely phenomenal, as I knew you would be. Thank you so much for joining us today on Sonia Poulton Show on today's News Talk.